To have you today. We talk a lot in Insiders about like how things are interconnected and politics and current events in life and how that intersects with how we're raising our kids. And Nikolai does a great job talking about that. She's got a older teenager, and I've just loved like all of her anecdotes about like how they interact, and it's definitely helping me think about how I'm raising my kid. And raising readers is also awesome and something I wish I knew existed when my kiddo was struggling with reading in his earlier elementary school years. So if anyone's watching this and their kids have any kind of reading struggles, please go find Raising Readers because she is exactly who we needed when he was younger. So welcome. I'm so glad that you're here.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here, and it's funny that we can't have like this other type of conversation, but it happens and we just keep moving. So, yeah, I have been doing first, I love y'all's group because I am an educator with a finance background. I have an MBA and I used it for a little bit and then I decided this is really not my jam. It's just the people that we work. Yes, and so I went to WashU to their in St. Louis to their program. I went to University of Chicago. That's where I started my undergrad, and then I went straight to business school, and I worked on Wall Street, and so I was around a lot of finance dudes. And I was like, I could not have picked a worst career career because this is not my jam at all. I recently have been thinking a lot about this because we did an economic study in Cuba. This is 20 years ago. We were there for 3 weeks. And so that has been near and dear to my heart. But I think it was in that trip with the people from graduate school that I should have known that I was in the wrong place. But I didn't. And I went to grad and then I went to school. And then September 11th happened because I am old. Um, September 11th happened. And then they froze our jobs for a year. And in that year, I was fostering a young lady, and she was just like, Mom, how I met her was I was a reading coach as a volunteer. And she was just like, one thing that you do really well is teach kids to read. So, if nothing else, you know that you can do it. And it took me 4 more years to finally listen to her because I would come home and be drinking because I hated my job in finance so much. And she was just like, you should probably look for a different job. And so then I got into the thing that I love to do, which is teach people to read. So this is, yes, it's why we vibe. Exactly. Because we want to be in finance, but we don't want to work with finance bros. I don't. But this is really important that we do this work and that we are also thinking about the way that money and power flows and that it impacts us all. And that we are operating in very imperfect systems. And so we have to be in this space and not of it. I grew up very religious. So my grandma used to say, we are in this world, but not of it. And you continue that, right? And she used to tell me things like, you have to consecrate yourself and separate yourself from other people. And she meant in a very religious way, but I really understand that it's a very values way. And so even if we're thinking about money or if we're thinking about parenting, yeah, or we're thinking about any of the things that we're constantly thinking about, how we participate in politics, how we participate in voting, how we participate in so many things, is that you have to consecrate yourself and separate yourself and be in this world but not of this world. And so that is a thread that is what grounds us. And as it relates to how I run my house, that's very much is that very much is that. So we can do it, or and I'm not saying y'all don't have to do it in a religious way. I don't do it in a religious way, right? So that is not my path. It was the path that I grew up in. I don't follow it. However, I feel that what I learned grounds me and my values ground me very much so. Okay, so far let me mute myself and see if anybody wants to check in because I am not about to talk forever.
Yeah, this is weird, this whole having to mute and pause extra, but maybe that means I can't talk over people because I have a tendency to do so, especially when I'm excited about the topic. But I also, I really kind of like this concept of like being of the money space, but not in it, because like that seems to describe the way we kind of feel about money. It's like we don't love the system, but like the system is where we're at. And so we have to figure out how that all works. And that includes like how we're raising kids and how we talk to them about things. And um, something that you talk about online a lot too is like literacy, not just with like young children, but like how much of like where we're at now too is that like older kids and adults don't have like comprehension and literacy in like a real world way. Oh, Lindsay, I love wanting to be part of the finance world, but not in it, in it, but not of it. Regina, do you have thoughts here too?
I just put maybe in it, but not of it. We are in it. We don't have a choice, but we try to be not of it.
Yeah, I'm not in it but not of it person. About a lot of things. When my son just came in, let me see if I can borrow his headphones.
Technology is awesome. Um, but yeah, no, something that we end up talking with Nikolai about, and which she talks about a lot. We interact mostly on Threads, um, so she's on all of the other platforms as well. But it's about how much of where we're at in like this current political place is also. I'm certain you've all seen it, where people read stuff online, but they don't actually read it and they don't comprehend it. And how many people who have grown up knowing how to read, but actually not knowing how to read or like absorb what's going on. Oh my gosh, we're not echoing.
Oh, okay. This is so much
Look at
better.
that. We can have like an actual conversation now.
Yeah. See, my son came in to spread the day. And then shout out to my son. We just completed his eco project last night. It took 22 volunteers and over 140 hours, and we are very excited.
So what's the
Tired, but
project? You can't just
Yeah, so there is a nearby extension of our county that does programming for the community, particularly young people. And for 20 years, they've had an abandoned campsite, which when you don't use something, you lose it. And so a private person came and leased most of it, and the county said, we better try to do some more programming in the community or the whole thing will get taken off. But we don't have trails. And so he did cleaned over 2,300 linear feet of established pavement that was just full of debris. And then he created two trails that were about 72 feet long. And it was pretty exciting. When he was ninth grade, y'all, you might find this interesting. He asked me if he could not go to high school, which was what we intended to do, homeschool him and then go to high school. And he was like, I think I want to take a permaculture design class instead of ninth grade. And I was like, okay, so then next year you go to high school. And he's about to graduate. He never went back to high school, but he has his permaculture design certification. And I figured, hey, if nothing else, he will always have a certification that he can design plans of and make money. So if I know that he has this trade. So that's why I signed off on it. And we went to do this project. And the trail that she wants is at a slope. And there's not 4 feet wide that we can do it. And this kid just had me and 5 other people with shovels and a tamper build a retaining wall from earthworks. So I think it paid off. So that was pretty cool. Um, so what I did want to say was about, yeah, in these times, what a lot of the time is happening on social media, but in general, is this lack of this knowledge base of what's going on, this knowledge base of what we're seeing politically, this knowledge base of what is happening in money systems, of all of those things. And so much of it is rooted in a lack of literacy, but also in the systems that we have on how we're taught and what has happened over the last 40 years. The multiplication, multiple choice, and kind of like our education system just teaches us about a lot of things and we never go deep into anything. We're all products of that. And in order for us to really develop a knowledge base, we have to break through that. We have to be able to pause and decide this is important and it is worthy of studying. That is an intentional choice that has been taken out of an education system and that a lot of us don't have, right? That is a principle that I have in my home and that I encourage all of us to have. And it doesn't necessarily have something to do with, because there's a lot of people that have literacy levels and have education and we have degrees, and yet we don't have the skill of saying, this is important and it is worthy of my study. It is worthy of my time, it is worthy of my attention. And if we really want to birth new worlds and make it in this thing that we're in, that we don't even know how to name, that hasn't even been before. There are other things that have been like this before, but not this. If we want to be on the other side and contribute to something beautiful on the other side, particularly as parents, we're going to have the courage to say this is important and it is worthy of my study. And as we enter into that, we will have to bring our children into it. There is no separation between our study and their study. We have to respect them and understand that they too are in this and that they need to learn how to study. So that's.
So yeah, I of the group that's here listening today, I'm the one that has the oldest kid who's 11 and in fifth grade. So in this group, you've got people who've got kids from 11 down to less than a year old. So you're the one with the like high schooler about to graduate. Like, can we talk a little bit about like how did you first start talking about the deeper stuff? Because you share some of the stuff that you both talk about now, but at 17, you can't start talking to them at 17. Like you got to start when they're a lot younger. How did you first start intentionally having those conversations? So at 17, you can have like the really heavy, deep stuff.
Yeah, so I think that that's one of the reasons why I like to teach people to teach their kids to read. It's not just so that if their children are struggling to read. So one thing is that I encourage everyone to teach their children to read, whether like this is just what I want everyone to do, and it's not because I teach that, but it's because I find that if teaching your children to read comes easy, that's just something that you enjoy and you do. Your child learns. The first time that I came into the skill of study, I did it with my parent. That already puts you on the up and up, right? So if you have the opportunity, because what we want to do is orient our children towards us. I want to be the person that you're like, okay, when I think of study and feeling good about study, I think of my parent. So that's the biggest hack. The next thing is if your child is struggling, for your child to experience who had the most patience with me as I struggled with a difficult thing that I needed to get to the other side of other things is my parent. One of the reasons why I think parents teaching people to read and why I think the system has stripped parents and families of that skill is because of how powerful that is. Because it orients your children. When I learn, this is who is my source of the learning. So that's number one. Number two, we're Black. So we're always talking about deep things from the time that we're very, very little because we don't have a choice. And so I think that that is something that comes a little bit easier to people that are Black and of color or the marginalized identities, because it's just like I have a client who became disabled very young, so before she was 2 or 3. And so when she was in my cohort, one time she told me one of the easiest ways that we can teach children about ableism is like when their toys break, we keep them and we don't necessarily even have to mend them, because that is the entry point of saying just because something is broken is not useful, or we don't have to mend it, but we have to, it just gets included into the play, right? That is something that I would have never, now it never left me from there. It changed the way my children played with toys. But it is only because her daughter sees the world through this lens where she can't move her legs, right? It's her lived experience that allowed me to understand why at 2 we already are aware of ableism and our ableist ways, because for her, right, that just became her lived experience so early. And so you might say that's a deep conversation, but she started having it at 2. And so because she started having it at 2, my daughter is, they're the same age. So then her daughter started at her 2. I met her when her daughter was 3. And so my daughter started having these conversations about ableism at 3. And so we're always having these conversations, and we should always have those conversations. It's just that we're going to say them in maybe developmentally appropriate ways. But I don't think it's difficult. If you don't want it to be difficult, I don't think it's difficult. I think children know what it is to feel excluded. Children know what it is to, like, I remember my daughter, maybe she's turned 9, so, she was 6 probably when I was letting her know, this is something really bad has happened in Palestine, and me having to explain it to her. And how I had to explain to her was it was about to be her birthday, and I had lost a contract because of something that I said. And when I say that I have lost a contract is probably that year, I am still recovering, if I am recovering, if I'm not yet recovered from that happening, because I had 2 contracts. One of them was mid 6 figures. The other one was, 40,000, and just like that. I mean, almost $200,000 in contracts just left my household. And I had to explain to my children why we're not going to have a birthday party, or we're not going to go to visit our family. And it was just because I made a statement online. That is so huge. To have to explain that to people, and then to your children, and say, and we're going to take you out of the homeschool co-op. Like, a lot of things are going to change because of this. For that to be explained to a 6-year-old and her not feel resentment towards you because her entire life changed, was a big deal for her. It was a big deal. And at the end of that, I feel like my children, it deepened my children's love for me and their appreciation, because had the courage to explain things to them. So how you have conversations is also like just have respect for your children and know that they can have it. Because I remember my mother saying she's not gonna respect authority or our country, or like how are you gonna make it so she doesn't like hate everybody? You know, how do you do that? And I was like, well, I hate everybody. I'm okay. I'm like, I hate America. I hate everything. Like, you know, it's okay. Um, you know, I just told her, like, this is what the people in power, not your neighbors, like the people in power are doing these things. I hate everybody. I'm okay. I am such a vibe, and I know that, and I love that about myself. So I never worry about it. I'm like, listen, it's okay. Your children have to see you be cool, and I think that that's a big deal. Like your children have to know that you're cool and not angry, but still principled. That you have sacred rage, but you're still joyous. Like they have to be able to see all of these things embodied so they will want to be like you. I think that that's a big part of it, is that you have to have values that your children will want to have because you are cool too. Like you can't be walking around being a grumpy person and not show them love and not show them nurture and then be like, why do my kids not like the things that I will have to tell them? Like that's not gonna work. But having those tough conversations, like, listen, I had this conversation with my daughter where I was just like, if this country is doing something and another country, if this country is doing something, right, and another country is supplying them with the weapons, which country is the bad country? I wasn't feeding her. I was like, I want to know what you think. She's 6, and she's like, I think they would both be wrong. Because if they can't, the other country can't do it without the weapon, then, right? And I was like, yeah, I kind of agree. I think a lot of the times we have to let the children come to that conclusion without our input. If we give them the inputs and like let them lead and let them get to it, you're like, if these two people are causing harm, what do you think is the resolution? How would you make amends? How would you make this right? Do you think it would be best to do this or to do that? Have a lot of open-ended conversations with your children, even if they're young, and you will realize your children will probably be on the same side that you're trying to get them to be, because children understand justice. Children understand fair. Children understand sacrifice. If you're like, I do it all the time. People tell me about money. Like, how do you get your kids not to buy stuff? Or how do you
Can
get
I interrupt here? Because I was going to
Yeah.
ask you to elaborate on this. Like, I know you've talked a lot about like things you will and will not do, places you will and will not shop, and that the kids are on board or understand. And I know for me, one thing I've noticed is it's like that's fine when it's just our household, but as my son just turned 10, as he's starting to be introduced to more people and compare himself to his peers, he struggles more with some of the boundaries that we have in our household. And we're, navigating that. But I'm curious if you have any like specific thoughts about that, because a lot of it starts to be, they start to reach a certain age, and then they're outwardly comparing themselves and their peers as well. Or, well, if I have to buy my video game on eBay and that takes me 3 weeks, and they ordered it on Amazon and they got it in 2 days, like that sucks, right? Like, and trying to explain the reasons there, or like, how have those types of conversations went, especially when it comes down to the comparison. And like, are you saying that this kid is bad or their parents are bad? Because that's often how sometimes it gets picked up at my house, and having to explain ethics in different households and things is difficult sometimes.
Yeah, well, I will say I have different ethics in my own household,
Mm-hmm.
right? So my partner has a different tolerance than mine. Um, I think he'll go along with some of the things that I want because he likes me and he wants me to be nice to him, and so, but so that's, you're navigating that, at least for me in my own household. And also I have two children. So for example, my 17-year-old will do anything for me. He just would. There are things that he does only because they're for me. um I don't think he cares about all of them, but he doesn't, he's like, I don't, but like, it's important to you. So one thing I will say, your care ethic and your love politic can go deep inside of your home, where some of the conversation is some things you will do because you agree and because this feels deep, you deeply resonate, and some things you do because it deeply resonates with me and we're in community and we're in relationship. And that has to happen inside of our homes in the same way that we want it to happen inside of our communities. And let me give you one quick example. My sister and my brother-in-law are in medicine, right? My sister is a nurse practitioner. Her husband is like world acclaimed surgeon. They think that if you're having an indoor event, you should mask and not eat. Because if you're removing your mask to eat, then you're not masking. It's not. And he's like, they're like, I know. Then this is no longer a mask event. um, he's like, if we're gonna eat, we don't have to mask. Like, we're not gonna eat and take our mask on and off. Like, he's like, it just doesn't make any sense. We should just like not eat. But eating in community is important for other people, right? Sometimes we get together and we eat in community. And so it's okay. So if he goes to an event, they go to an event. Now I know that they feel like you're either going to eat or not eat. And if you're eating and it's mask, he's like, it's silly. We don't have to mask at that point. But he will go to an event, mask, take off his mask to eat, and then put his mask back on. I know that he knows. I know that he thinks that's silly. I know that he thinks that's not medical or safe or any of those things, but he would still do it because he's in community with people. There are things that we do because they're important to people that we care about. And so in my house, there are things that my son does because it's important to me. There are things that my partner does because it's important to me. So when you start, and there are things that I do because it's important to them. Like, it has to be, everybody is doing things. When you do that, you end up having more and more principled and caring, like, a ecosystem inside of your home. And once you do that, then you can take it outside. So doing it inside your house is probably the way that your children start to see it. And then also, for your children to know that, like, it's not that Nicholas is a bad person, it's just that there are things that are less important to him, right? It's just things that are less important to him. And starting to see that even inside of your home, there's a difference, and that you can still love that person, but you're negotiating the space at all times. The more that you do it inside of your home, the easier it gets outside. Now, I have a client that I love very, very much, who will not boycott anything. I struggle with that. Most people in my life that do not do that, outside of my mama, I'm not in community with. because I don't rock with them. And I think it causes harm. I have an emotional attachment to this family. And I can't cut them off. Just can't cut them off just because they don't participate in boycotts, right? My daughter has a harder time because to her it's like they should not be our friends. We should not be their friends. We're not aligned. Um, that's been hard for my daughter because she's like we usually don't have people in our lives that are not aligned. That's usually what we do. We just don't align ourselves with people who are not aligned. And then every time we're around them, they're just like living la vida loca, eating and shopping wherever they are. Like, why are we still like, and that has been hard. And it has been, we have met up with them. Or, for example, I do a book club. They're a part of the book club. My daughter has chosen not to be a part of the book club. Oh, I have a Scorpio baby. She is not going to rock with you. She's like, you're not. She's like, well, I saw her on Zoom with a Starbucks cup and I was just like, and I don't care if they're in a different state. I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it around me. Like she's like, I don't want to see the cup in my space. Don't be a part of her club. Like, I don't know what to do. She's like, and I am disappointed in you. She's like, and I am disappointed in you that you're still letting them like bring that on. You should make it a rule that nobody can gets to drink with that on Zoom. And I'm like, their parents bought it. Like, she's like, they should tell their parents. They're old enough. And I met them. And I told them, she's like, I went to Five and Below with them. And I told them, you shouldn't be buying this stuff. I said it to them and I told them why. And they didn't listen to me. Therefore, I don't want to be around them. I don't knock her for it. But there will come a point, well, she will have to make that decision, right? It'll be somebody that she feels very close to and that she will have to learn to make exceptions for or not. Right? It is, we get to have those conversations. But in terms of being inconvenienced, I'm always like, I don't really mince around my kids. I don't mince words. I'd be like, you know what? Or even with my son, he'd be like, we can just get it on such and such. And I'd be like, well, that's really shitty. And I think it's shitty that you're willing to do it. And I don't want to. And we're not going to. And I let them sit with it. I mean, what are they going to do? Be in history? Listen, our grandparents didn't get it in 5 weeks or 5 days or 2 days. Like, our kids are going to be okay. Like, your kid nothing's going to happen to them because they were upset. Live with your upset. Like, I do not care. Sometimes we just care a little bit too much about our kids' feelings around consumerism. How you counter that, and this is why. It is
I'm gonna read the chat comment just so that anyone watching later knows what you're responding to. So one of the hardest parts of being a parent in these times is navigating those exceptions with other families, especially when my kids are good friends with their kids, but our views are not totally aligned. Okay, go ahead. Just so people know what you're responding to.
I think it's just, we get to have conversations with our children and say, do we want to be aligned with X, Y, and Z or not? And you get to decide. And it's okay. I think a lot of people don't want to be bad people. We don't want to be like, oh, we cut such and such off because they were not aligned. And I think we have to get really, really good at that. It is okay. My partner is just like, you're just a all or nothing. Like, you really will cut somebody off. And I said, because when, like, I'll say this, y'all, we were in this soccer league. And in the mom chat and in all these things, like, I remember we would always get like $5 pizzas. And we were like, we don't have to get pizza from these people anymore. As a matter of fact, here's some extra money. and we can just get it from another place. But the soccer people were like, yeah, but it's just $5 pieces just make more sense. Like, we should just get the pizzas from here. And we just left the league. I don't know what to say. Like, we just left because playing soccer is cool, but if these systems collapse, I want to know who the people were like, nuck if you buck and didn't buy the $5 pizza. I want to know that. I want to know because I really believe we're going to have to know who those people are. And so I'm okay. And I want people to know who I was. I'm okay. Like, kids didn't play 5 different sports all the time. Like, when it
Can
like,
I
yeah.
can I say that I posted something online today about how extracurriculars are a want and not a need? I don't know if anyone else saw that. Um, the way people came at me saying that extracurriculars are a need was really mind-boggling. I think there's a
That's so
conversation about
mind-boggling
like
now
whether you can
because we've done this before, but
know, but it's just like wild to me. Like there are certain things you're going to do or your kids are going to choose to do that again you may not fully agree with or maybe you're okay with, but it was very telling to me that how many people said that that was an absolute necessity. And I think people have a hard time understanding what is an actual need, because then if you think everything's a need, you can't actually make decisions about whether you're going to continue to do something or not. As maybe a side comment, but it just feels like a lot of these conversations are, um, we have expectations that we have to do things certain ways. And if we never question that, it is really easy to always make exceptions for everything. Like you said, you've got close, dear friends that you make exceptions for. But if you don't have a line, how do you know who you're making an exception for versus
No.
making everything?
No, absolutely. Also think I was wired this way. I remember being as young as 13. So I grew up in between New York and Puerto Rico. And so I remember probably being 14 years old when I was just like, I'm pro independence. I'm a Puerto Rican nationalist. I'm pro independence. And I'm not going to other people's houses that are pro statehood. People in the middle, I can be in the middle, but myself, I'm not going to be. And my mom be like, that's your aunt. She changed your diaper. Like, what do you mean? I'm not going there because when I'm there, I'm upset. I'm not going there because they're aligned with something that, like, it's just, I can't do it. And this is me at 14. So imagine me at grown 45. Like, I don't need a lot of people. Like, I'm okay. But this is something that we have to be very, 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 very clear about what is a need and what is a want. Very clear. Because it makes everything easier once you understand. So if nothing else, if you're very young and there's a practice that you want to help your children with, is to really, really, really get good at wants versus needs. And I'll say this, soccer league is not a need, right? There's people who never soccer and having this particular toy and having this thing in 2 days, like it's not. And so we have to get really good at that, and for our children to know it and to see it as a service, to see it as a part of our love politic for them. Because if you're walking around thinking that everything is a need, you will walk around with a hole inside of your soul that always has to be filled and that cannot be filled. That is a consumerism disease. So we as parents get to be our children's immune system against something that is so pervasive, because it is killing people in the planet. It is a disease. So you as a parent get to set the temperament where you're like, child, you do not need that. And like, I'm not even going to have this conversation. Like, I'm not even going to entertain the fact that it is. But I'll say this, the only way that you can do it is you absolutely give them what they need. If you are not giving them what they need, then everything becomes a need. This is where it's key. If you're providing children with community, if you're providing children with values, if you're providing children with nurture, if you're providing children with respect, I can say it's just like that year where I said, we're not going to have a birthday party. And my kids were like, okay. We're not going to go on vacation. And my kids were like, okay. Because at the end of the day, if my children need someone to see them and accept them and pause and make them feel special, it is me. I do that better than anything else that I do, is for my children to experience radical acceptance. When you are given permission to be and you're nurtured and you feel radical acceptance in your home, you're not tripping over $2 shipping. You're just not. Because everything inside of you is so fulfilled. When we're worried about, when we are experiencing contentment and we're experiencing being nurtured and cared for, then all of these other things fall into place and become, and they're not our negotiables. So a lot of the time, the reason why all of these extracurriculars, what I tell people all the time, we don't enrich things that are already rich. So all of these enrichment activities are there because the life that they're living is not rich. The education that they're getting is not rich. We need all of these extracurricular activities because the curriculum is shit. Right? But if the curriculum was good and the experience was good, if the life was already rich, you would not have to continually enrich it. The reason that people constantly want things is because their needs are not met. So meet the needs, teach the curriculum, like teach them the substance, and then you don't need all of these other things.
Regina, I feel like maybe you have thoughts on this because this this really, yeah, no, I really like, we don't need to enrich the things that are already rich.
I feel
And
like I'm
so much
pretty
of it is, go ahead, Regina.
I'm pretty aligned with most of what you're saying, Nikolai. We're the family that just says no often. We don't do that. Like we've learned there are times when we make exceptions every now and then if it's a one-time thing, but if this is how it's going to be every week, this isn't how we're not going to make it. We're not going to make an exception every week because that's not an exception. That's the norm now. Right? Like there are times when we're exposed to things and we make a decision like I didn't know that this is how it was going to be and I'm not going to like cause a scene for the kid right here, so we're going to do the thing and then we're going to talk about it later and we're going to say we're not going to do it again. Like so learning to navigate that, but me and my partner both are we'll cut you off right away. It doesn't bother us. So that part's pretty easy for my family. But like a personal example, one that's interesting that has come up more recently and was an interesting way to talk to my son about how different people value things, or like how people can have maybe similar values but it looks different. So we live in a rural area. There's not a lot of shopping here. We shop at the local Kroger, whatever. They're different areas. We go to Walmart. We go to the grocery outlet, we go to the restaurant supply, we go to the bread outlet, we hit 5 or 6 different stores to cover what we're going to get. And my son came home after a conversation with a teacher facilitator, because he's in a homeschool group too, and he was like, I don't want you to shop at Walmart anymore. And we were like, well, what's this about? Well, my teacher said it's bad, or something. Like, it was,
Yeah.
I wonder what actually happened with what conversation came up. But it was really interesting because when we talked about like, well, here's when we go here and why, and mostly we try to do X, Y, Z. But then like a week or two later, it was his birthday, and she only has about 10 kids, so she often buys them a birthday present. And they shopped on Amazon, and she ordered him something on Amazon. And so we got to have a conversation about like, we don't shop at Amazon for very similar reasons that she said she doesn't shop at, or she doesn't like Walmart or whatever. We go there for cereal and 2 or 3 things, and we get everything everywhere else, or whatever it was. And we talked about we go to Walmart for things that we need, which is like food, in ways that we can afford to have mom not be at work and be home. And like there's interesting ways, but you can say, but she's choosing not to shop there and we're choosing not to shop here. We're doing similar things and we're on a similar page, but maybe we're doing them a little bit different. Um, but it's interesting when they have to like they wrapping their heads around that can be hard, I think, sometimes for the younger ones, because they do really want to think about things and people in terms of like good or bad, and finding those ways to introduce the nuance has been a very interesting part of this age for me. So
Yeah, and two ways that I help that, and one I want to share. I so I have this reading guide, and I get it printed through Amazon's direct publishing. And so my kids are like, but you're using Amazon. And that's really hard because I am, right? And so I remember when I had to tell them that I was going to switch to use Amazon to print it, because a lot of the times we do, like, we gift for low income families. We like give them this thing and it's 3 books, and I'm like, if they're somebody's charging me $30, like I don't have it to just like give away it at 90. Like I don't have it. And I was like, but if I have Katie printing, like I can give it away at 30. Or if I have somebody give me a donation and gives me $100, I can like serve 4 families versus one. And I had to navigate that with my children who are in high Amazon. And so they're like, how can that make sense? Right? We all have to have those kind of red lines. And I don't know, like I said, we're in the system, not out of the system. And so we just have to navigate. But again, there are things that my children don't have, and there are things that we don't do. I'm not worried about my children's upset because I know how I show up as a parent. When I say, no, we're not doing 2 events, we're not doing 2 extracurricular activities in this season. And I'll tell you, so you really understand. In my house, we do a quarterly meeting of who needs the most in that upcoming quarter. So, like, let's say I'm trying to finish a project, or my partner is coming up on a promotion, or my son had to do Eagle. If I know he's doing a project this season, there is no way that I was going to put her in an extracurricular activity. Now, that's not me shorting her. That's me teaching her how to show up, right? So, yes, you're going to be a little bit more bored, and you might use more screen time. Like, there are things that you're going, like, this is the season that we show up for Nicholas. Next season, like when my brother passed, we were all grieving. But my brother is like my soulmate. And it had to be, I cannot show up in the same, like, who I've been in your life is not who I am in this season. And everybody has to show up. And all of us are grieving. And I need more. Like these things have to happen, and for us not to feel bad, because if we're really showing up for our children and for each other, we have to know. Like we have to know. And so I think the answer to everything is a stronger love politic, a stronger connection, stronger communities, more respect, more reverence. To me is and this is an antidote of everything. This is how we explain. You can't explain heavy things to children that have not been loved heavily, that are not being nurtured heavily. So if you want to do those things with your children, then it's in your love and your care politic. I need you to know that what I'm doing is telling you the truth, and that I would only tell you because This is spiritual for me, is important. Like, it's in the service of you. When your children know you to be that person, they're going to take it in that way. I loved, and I'll say this, my son was like, I love knowing that you're willing to lose something for the right thing. Because now I know that you're not picking on me. When you correct me, you're not picking on me. You just believe in right. And so, like, you're standing for right. It's not a me thing. You're not being critical of me. This is it. The other thing is that we have to understand that we have to continue to do this work. Our depth and our growth and our expansiveness and the way that we hold ourselves also has to, in and of itself, also deepen. Like, our practice has to become even, like, we have to grow in our practice of persistence because we have to grow in our discipline. Our children have to see that. Sometimes you're going to say, I used to do it that way. I don't do it anyway because I've learned more information. This is what your children have to see. The more that you embody that, the easier all of the conversations become. Truly. It gets easier. Living in a way that is values-based makes everything easier. The adjustment might feel more difficult, but clarity makes everything easier. And clarity comes through study and reflection. And this is why people find it so hard, is because you're trying to study and reflect on your own, and you're letting children in. Now I'm going to piecemeal you this little bit and piecemeal you this little. And what you're wondering is, how come my child is resisting? But you didn't let them in on the study. Your child has not gone through the study and the clarity. You're imposing your clarity into their practice. This is why we study together. Does that make sense?
So we are right at the top of the hour, and I wanted to give people time to come on camera if they want. So, Regina, I think, is this a good spot to cut the recording?
I think we're good unless you have any, follow up or kind of.
Well, for anyone watching, how can they find you? Yeah.
No, how you can find me, just, I am Raising Readers at .com is kind of like the website. I am Raising Readers, and then at Raising Readers is my Insta and my Threads.